In the Blackjack Apprenticeship membership page, there's something called Pro Betting Software. We're going to take a look at that today and see what happens based off of the size of your bankroll to your expected value as well as your risk of ruin. All right, so since most of you who are watching me are relatively new to advantage play in Blackjack, we're going to start off not with a $10,000 bankroll, but with just a $5,000 bankroll. Again, our goal with this is to try to get the expected value as high as possible, as well as the risk of ruin as low as possible. And by messing with a few of these numbers and kind of the table game rules that we have, as well as our bet spread, we should be able to get a good idea of how to maximize our expected value and minimize our risk of ruin. Okay, so first off, you'll see a few things here. One, you might want to have this rounds per hour estimation turned on, because you need to know kind of the speed at which your table is playing. The more rounds per hour you have, the higher expected value is going to be. However, as a beginner, you might decide that a very fast dealer isn't maybe best for you. At the same time, maybe a slow dealer, you probably don't want either, because you want to get more rounds per hour in. So you're going to try to find a dealer that maybe is average. Okay, if it's too fast, you might lose the count, especially as a beginner. So we're going to just kind of play with an average table. Now, notice that this is not heads up. Usually the fewer number of players there are, the better for your expected value, and that's true. However, as a beginner with a $5,000 bankroll, you need to do what's called wonging in and wonging out, meaning there's going to have to be someone else playing through those negative counts at the table already. So when you join the table, you probably won't be the only one there. That's going to be the best way to maximize your expected value. All right, we'll get to that here in a little bit. So if I'm playing at a 6-deck game, okay, usually those have mid-shoe entry. They allow you to join the game kind of in the middle of the shoe. So you're starting off back counting, and when it gets to maybe a +2 or so is where you'll join the table. I talked about that in, I think, one of my previous videos. Our unit amount here is going to be $5. And let's say I typically like to start off here with a 1 to 10 at 2 spots. That's kind of my go-to. And then we can adjust it from there depending on what we have. All right, over here, you'll notice that when I did that, it changed my bets. But before we get to that here, let's look at just the rest of the game rules that we have. So this is a 6-deck. Okay, there's going to be 1 deck cut off. So there's 5 decks that are before the cut card, 1 deck after. Where I play, there's it's H17 games, and so it's not S17. I know, like in Pennsylvania, I think they have to have S17, as well as other places. S17 is better, but unfortunately where I'm from, they have H17. Double after splits, I wouldn't recommend playing a game where they don't let you do that. And then resplitting aces, if you do have a game that lets you resplit aces, that lowers your risk of ruin and also increases your expected value, so that's better. However, again, where I play, they don't have that. They let you split them, but they don't let you resplit. So, and then also there's no surrender. If the surrender is allowed, that really lowers your risk of ruin and increases your expected value. Now you'll notice here that this is $13 an hour. This is probably not worth playing. Let me turn it back off. In fact, now it's back to below 11. It's probably not worth playing. So we want to adjust some of these bets a little bit so that it would be worth playing. And also we want to keep our risk of ruin low. Now, if you look at the side over here, they have these 3 dots. When you click on these, it tells you what your edge is. And if it's negative, you probably don't want to be playing through negative counts and negative house edges when you're a beginner. And so, let's see, I think, yeah, at 1 is where we finally gain the edge. So everything below that, 0, -1, and everything lower, I'm going to put at 0, meaning that as I am back counting behind the table, I am not jumping in at those negative counts. I am waiting for the count to become favorable for me, and that's where I'm going to join. Now, at a 1, let's mess around with these numbers a little bit to try to get our expected value higher. It already did. It jumped up when I got rid of those negative ones. It jumped up to $13 an hour. However, most of you could probably go get a part-time job that pays $13 an hour, and it probably would not be worth the risk for you to go to the casino and play there. We want to get this up maybe around 20, 25 or so before we would consider going. Now, obviously, the bigger the bankroll you have, the easier you can do that. One other thing that you want to consider, you probably want to keep your risk of ruin below 2%. All right, I know most pros or professional card counters like to keep below 1%, but as you're just starting out, you'll probably have to be a little bit more risky with your bankroll. However, I would not suggest playing anything above 2.5% when you're first starting out. My friend Spartan, who's a BJA member, he kind of said it like this: if you have a 2% risk of ruin, that means that if you have 100 people in a room, it's like 2 of them get shot. All right, so kind of morbid, but he had a good an analogy for that. So I always like to think about that when I'm thinking of risk of ruin. Really, it's not getting shot. Of course, it's that those two out of those 100 people would probably lose all their $5,000 bankroll with playing at these different stakes. Okay, so let's mess with these numbers. You can go in here and edit these a little bit. Again, if we have like a $5 table, let's say maybe we are not going to be betting $10, but let's say $5 at 2 spots. Just see what that does here. Looks like our risk of ruin is about the same. 10, 15, 20. You know what? Let's see if we can afford to maybe bet a little bit higher. Again, I'm trying to keep this risk of ruin below 2. The more that we put out, the better. All right, and let's go here with this. Let's go 10, and then we'll just jump up by 10. So I'm going to say 20, 30, 40, and 40. And we'll cap it out here at 50, which means I need to do this. Notice this little box that pops up. It says everything higher than a true 7 would also be 50. Okay, so this did a few things for me. One, it increased my expected value to $21.77, but the risk of ruin also went up to about 2.5%. So that's a little bit high for my liking. So we can switch things a little bit here. Let's say we change the numbers, we change closer to 0 and make that a little bit less. That's going to lower our risk of ruin. So what if we say we're just going to play 1 spot of $5 at a true 1, 2 spots of 10, and instead of increasing those, how about we say at a 3, we call this 25? Is that going to be too much? That's going to be too much here. So 20, 30, 40, 50, if we call it 60. Yeah, it's still going to increase it a little bit. All right, so that increases both the risk of ruin. So unfortunately, when you have a pretty low bankroll like this, like $5,000, your risk of ruin has to be a little bit high in order for you to make a decent amount. Okay, now if you can save up just a little bit here, and that's going to bring me to my second bankroll. And in the second bankroll, we're going to change it to not $5,000, but $10,000. Okay. You'll notice when I do this, it automatically changes a few things. You can see that my expected value and risk of ruin also changed a little bit. All right. We're still going to be playing with another person at the table because we need to wong in and wong out at those different counts. So we're only playing the positives. All right. And this gives me, again, maybe once you've played a few hours, you can afford maybe a faster dealer. Okay. And let's see, did that change it? Yeah, it changed it up to 153 rounds per hour instead of whatever it was before. By the way, guys, this is Blackjack Apprenticeship's website that I'm using. I'm going to have a link down below in my pinned comment of this video if you find that this is interesting. So you have to get some sort of betting software in order to make this worth it. If you use my link, though, down below, I do get a little kickback on that, so I'll explain more about that later. Anyway, 153 rounds per hour, got a fast table here. This time, let's say we have a $10 unit that we're using, and that means that we can kind of increase our bets by 10 each time, $10, as well as you probably are going to be playing at a table minimum that's $10. In our last one, I think it was $5. Okay, so let's see, we still have the same rules over here. The game hasn't changed, so that means that our edges also haven't changed. We don't have the edge yet at 0, but we barely have it at a true count of +1. Right? Again, we probably don't want to be playing those negative counts, so I'm going to make those all 0. And then also, since I gained the edge at a true 1, in my minimum kind of unit that I'm using here is $10, I'm going to say that this is actually 10, and let's make this in 2 spots. Okay, that's going to decrease our risk of ruin just a little bit. Okay, and then if you think that this is 10, and we're just multiplying whatever our true count is by 10, I might make this 40, and then 50, 50, 50, and so on. So this did a few things. One, it increased my expected value to $30 an hour, but the risk of ruin really dropped. Okay, I'd probably be okay with a risk of ruin closer to 1% at a bankroll of 10,000 to increase this expected value. So let's play with these a little bit here. Let's see here. What if we made this instead of 20? Let's call this 25. Maybe call this 50. Call this 75. And let's say we tap out there at 75. I'm going to make the rest of these 75s. Now it's not just a straight up 75. This is 2 spots of 75. So notice this increased my risk of ruin to 2.54%. It also increased the expected value to $46 an hour. Now we're talking about some pretty decent money here. All right. Oops. You know what? Whenever I hit the scrolly button on my mouse, it changes that. $47 an hour almost. Okay. Again, this is just a little bit high for me for the risk of ruin, 2.63%. And so because of that, let's see if we can mitigate this just a little bit. What if I call this, what if we play 1 spot instead of 2 at a true 1? And that lowered it a little bit, but not enough. Okay, so how about 20? Let's go 30. So you can think maybe that and you want to pick a bankroll that makes sense, or a bet spread that makes sense to you. Like at 1, you're betting $10, 2, 20, 3, 30. And then after that, maybe you can start to, at your higher true counts, you know, do something that is a little more interesting. All right, so 10, 20, 30. Call this 2 spots of each. Okay, notice this one. Our expected value didn't go down a whole lot at all, but our risk of ruin did. So just by switching a few of those numbers around, you can play with this and try to get something that makes sense for you and also decreases your risk of ruin as much as possible and increases your expected value. All right, now that is our $10,000 bankroll. Let's talk about one more bankroll here, and that's going to be a $15,000 bankroll. Okay, I think you're going to find this one the most interesting because, one, you can, we're still going to wong in and wong out. You can maybe afford to play through a little bit of negative expected value, meaning that you're going to get more time in at the table. You want to be a little careful with that, though. You can't just kind of take license to play everything negative. You'll notice that if you have this software, it automatically puts you in starting at a -1. Right, we can maybe afford to play $15 tables, it looks like. Again, if I have a 1 to 10 bet spread at 2 spots, this is lower expected value because we are playing some of those negatives. Okay, if you want to get rid of that, you can say you're not playing any negative counts. All of a sudden, we're back up to $41 an hour. At 0, all right, what I like to do sometimes is I like to start at a kind of back count and start at a true 2, and then whether the count goes positive or negative, it goes up or down from there, I should say. I like to kind of tap out once I get back to 0 because I know that's where I lose the edge. And because of that, I'm not playing every single 0 count. And so instead of, if this is a $15 minimum table, you don't necessarily have to put in 15 here. You can maybe decide you're playing about half of the 0 counts, and so I put in like 8 or something like that, just to kind of say that I'm going to play some of the 0 counts, but not all of them. And let's see if we can mess with this a little bit to get it higher. Let's see if we can get above 50 and keep our risk of ruin below 1. All right, at a $15,000 bankroll, you probably are going to start to want to really lower your risk of ruin. I know we've been around 2% or so the last few, but let's see if we can keep this one below 1. By messing with a few things. All right, at a 1, I'm going to be playing $15 in 1 spot. At a true 2, I might play 15 at 2 spots. And then from there, I might ramp it up to playing with green chips. All right, so at a true 3, I'm going to be playing $25 in 2 spots, so 1 green chip. A true 4, I might play like 50. 50. And at a true 5 and higher, you could potentially play 75. All right, it looks like that lowered my expected value because I lowered this, but it also really lowered the risk of ruin. All right, so what if at a true 6, we play 100 in 2 spots? Okay, that got it back up to 44 an hour, double the risk of ruin at 40%. I can still probably risk a little bit more than that. Okay, so how about instead, what if we change this to 2 spots at a true 1, and then I call this 25. I kind of just shift these down 1, 25, 50, 75. Again, what I'm doing is just messing around with this software, guys. If you get this, you can create, obviously, a custom bankroll to you. Colin Jones at Blackjack Apprenticeship, he doesn't mind me showing this off. I've talked with his people a little bit, and we're obviously happy to get you guys to get this, because when it gets to a point of, you know, $15,000, it's really a matter of you can't afford not to have some sort of betting software. You need to have something to run these numbers and make sure it's worth it for you, okay? All right, so it looks like this, I'd probably be okay with a 1.17%. It gets me above $50 an hour. All right, now, let's say that we have this bet spread and we want to do a few things with it. One, maybe we can start to afford to play S17 games. All right, maybe like you're in, I think Pennsylvania has S17 only, as well as I believe they also allow surrenders. Watch what this does. This dramatically increased my expected value, right, almost $15 more there, and also really lowered my risk of ruin. Again, if you want to keep this at 1%, you could probably get your expected value closer to $100 by messing with your bet spread. All right, let's just put in the one that they give us. Let's say we have a unit of 25. Okay, and then we don't want to play the negatives. So put in zeros there. Yeah, this is closer to $100 an hour with keeping that risk of ruin below 2%. All right, if you want to keep it even lower, you can just maybe max out at 100 instead of 125. Oops, 100, and call this 100. There you go. Now it's closer to 1%, still making 83 an hour. I think a lot of you would probably take that. So you can see as your bankroll builds, you are able to play kind of higher stakes, which will lower your risk of ruin with a bigger bankroll and also increase your expected value. If you keep playing at that same bankroll you started with, you really won't see that ramp up as quickly as possible. It won't be as exponential as maybe it could be. There is one other thing I want to show you, and that's at a $15,000 bankroll is when I maybe start to consider playing through some of those negative counts. And you might want to start with double deck. I know sometimes I watch that a little bit closer. I probably would try to play a double deck game that maybe cuts off right around half a deck or so. Okay, if maybe 1.25. Let's do 1.25 just to show this to you. Okay, call it a $25 minimum table. And again, we're playing an S17 game. Let's say surrender is allowed here. All right, and then since you have to, these are no mid-shoe entry games usually, you probably need to play through some of these negatives. And since my table minimum is 25, I'm going to throw in some 25s here. And you can see double deck has such good rules usually that the risk of ruin stays pretty low. All right, and your expected value also increases quite a bit. Now, this last one, this -3, kind of like what I did with the 0 earlier. When the count gets super negative, even though there's no mid-shoe entry, you don't necessarily have to play through all those. You can get up in the middle of the round, say that you have to, you know, quote unquote, make a phone call or go to the restroom, right? Make up any excuse, go get a drink, right? And so you're probably not going to be playing everything negative, right? This includes all the negative values, -4, -5, -6, and so on. And so I might put in a number that's like 15 there. You know, I'll play some of the -3s, some of the -4s maybe, but when it gets past that, I need to probably get up from the table. I can't afford to play those super negative counts in double deck. Now, unfortunately, they won't let you come back and play in that round. You'll have to wait till the shuffle, but by playing through some of these, it's probably going to be okay. All right, now I'm going to use the bet spread that I typically use on my channel that you see. So it's most negatives is going to be 25s, right, for the negative expected value. However, once we gain the edge, which it jumps up quite a bit here in double deck at a true 1, I'm going to be betting 2 spots of the minimum, so 25. And then at a true 2, this is going to be like 2 greens in 2 spots, 3 greens in 2 spots, 4 greens in 2 spots. And then, let's see, this is still a 1.5 risk of ruin. That's probably okay, all right? If you can get a game that cuts off less, all right, it's going to be even better. Look how dramatically that risk of ruin went down by just a few more cards cut off, or a few less cards cut off, I should say, past the cut card. All right, if it's something in between there, you know, you can kind of split the difference, but your risk or your expected value also went up almost like $40. So if that's true, if you do have a really good penetration game, that's probably one of the best things to look for. Maybe at a true 5, I'll even bet $125 in 2 spots, and that'll be my max. Okay, and this gives me a risk of ruin less than 1%, which is really good. Again, just 1 out of 100 people will probably lose their entire bankroll playing this. Obviously, most of them will make money. And then your expected value is $121 per hour. All right, really, really good there. Now, let's say they don't have surrender, for example. You do have to keep that in mind. This lowers your expected value and also really increases your risk of ruin. Or maybe there's no surrender, but you are allowed now to resplit your aces. Okay, this might be something that, you know, is maybe a little bit more realistic. All right, or if there's an H17 game, that really takes it down a little bit. So you probably want to look for those S17 games. Okay, so a couple things with this. One, you want to make sure that you probably have some sort of betting software like this so that you can also follow along, type in your bet spreads and get specific numbers. All right, we have to be accurate with our record keeping as card counters and advantage players. Otherwise, if you're just winging it, you're probably going to be a losing player. Okay, you need to have very accurate records. To do that, in the pinned comment of this video, like I said, I have this Blackjack apprenticeship. This is the apprentice membership. This gets you access to the pro betting software. So does the elite one, I think. And so if you use my link that I have down there, I do get a little kickback from Blackjack apprenticeship, and you can you know, support me that way. I'd really appreciate it. Now, when you click on that, it's not cheap, okay? But you do get what you pay for. There's so many good things here. Colin has a video course he's set up. He has his training suite where you can sit there and train. All right, the pro betting software, which we were looking at today, as well as Casino 401, tells you kind of the penetration, the rules for certain games, how many tables are at different casinos. Just lots of really good tools here, lots of bells and whistles on the Blackjack apprenticeship site. So again, if you use my link, I do get a little kickback on that, and I'd appreciate if you did that. If you can't quite afford that yet, I understand, all right? Keep following me, and the best way to support my channel if you aren't able to purchase a membership with BJA is just to like this video, guys. Please give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate that either way. And so with those things kind of in mind, hopefully this helped you kind of get an idea of how to increase expected value and decrease your risk of ruin so that you can be successful out there at the casino. Remember, until next time, this is A1 Blackjack.